Tuesday, the European Union gave its Sakharov Prize for Human Rights to gynecologist Denis Mukwege, who in the eastern Congolese city of Bukavu has for years been running a clinic where he deals with the victims of rape. We're talking about rape as a weapon of war. From Altoona, Pennsylvania, Leanne DeRoche, co-founder with Dr. Mukwege of the Panzi Foundation. From Geneva, Bineta Diop, director of Women Africa Solidarity. And here in the studio, Julia Wono runs the Africa Bureau of Internet Without Borders, and author and journalist Natasha Henry. We were talking about this concept, Natasha, of to get your goals in places that are a bit lawless, like Eastern Congo, targeting women.
First of all, I'd like to underline the fact that this man is a hero in the noble sense, political sense, human being sense. Him and all the people who work with him. I think this prize is a very strong message from the European Parliament. It's the Sakharov Prize for freedom of speech, which is a big statement because it shows that he's not only a doctor, he's got all this political involvement, and freedom of speech means that there are people on the other side who don't agree with his freedom or his speech. So I really want to congratulate him, and also, I mean, the rest of his team. This is a prize he's got to share with a lot of people: nurses, psychologists, doctors, social workers, pediatricians. There are lots of very good people working around a man like that. So of course they are facing an incredible tragedy that none of us can really understand or begin to imagine, especially here in Europe, because when we talk about rape victims here, it's mostly from a psychological point of view. You know, you have to recover after a rape, of course, but it's reconstruction from a psychological point of view. You've got to face shame and secrecy and all these psychological feelings. In this case, what happens is rape is a weapon because the physical side of this rape is absolutely beyond imagination. And the ladies who have spoken before me have been to that clinic, and they know how, to what extent these people can go to actually kill the women from that particular society. So yes, it's a weapon because they are killing, as the lady said before me, they are killing the women who are peace builders, family breeders, who are, you know, they're in charge. If you kill them by raping them, you weaken that whole society and the community. And we're not talking about just rape; it's gang rape, and it's very, very terrible sexual violence. So it does kill you. It kills them, unless someone like this doctor comes in and saves their lives.
Julia Wono?
Yes, I totally second what was said earlier. First of all, congratulate Dr. Mukwege on his prize, because it's symbolical for Africans, for many Africans who have been trying to get attention, the world attention on that conflict, which has been forgotten. Although, as it was said in the report earlier, we all carry a piece of DRC in our pockets today. This said, in my opinion, hopefully the Sakharov Prize that was awarded to Dr. Mukwege will go beyond the symbol. What I mean is that the DRC conflict, the Kivu conflict, has been going on for, I think, 10 years. You've said it concentrates the biggest UN peacekeeping mission.
23,000 peacekeepers.
Absolutely, at the moment. But what are the results? We are still talking about these women today, unfortunately. And Dr. Mukwege had to do what he's been congratulated for yesterday. So it has to go beyond the symbol. What does the European Parliament, what does the European Union do in order to secure peace in that region? That is a question that we're all asking, and hopefully it will go way beyond just a symbol.
You think that the fact that the European Parliament awarded this prize means that Europe will be doing more
I hope. We remember that last year, the UN, the Security Council, adopted a resolution. I forgot the exact number that states that peace and security in the world depend on the gender equality, so the place of women in our societies. And probably the Sakharov Prize being awarded to Dr. Mukwege is on that path. So, well, we hope that it's a call to the European Union not only to give a prize, but also to be proactive in order not to just to stay in the symbol.
All right. Leanne de Roche, on that point, let me read to you what last month at the rostrum of the United Nations General Assembly, the president of DR Congo said. Joseph Kabila saying, "You all know what my country looked like just 13 years ago. I'm happy to be able to say to you today that the Democratic Republic of Congo is once again a country that is standing tall. It is a country where peace becomes stronger every day." Leanne de Roche, is that what you saw when you went to Eastern Congo?
No, and this is actually part of the problem. I mean, you've got a 63% poverty rate. You have 28% of women who have never been to school. You have 148 children of every 1,000 children that die before the age of 5. And I think this is something a message that Dr. Mukwege has repeated constantly. There should be shame around the way that the level of violence that's occurring in that country. And I'd like to go back to this phrase of rape as a weapon of war. That is true. That does represent some of the patterns of what's happening there in terms of the gender-based violence. But I think sometimes it masks what's actually happening. And this speaks to your larger question. Congo is supposedly post-conflict. They're neither in a state of peace nor of war currently. Rape is certainly used as a weapon, but it also, when we use that phrase, it means that we overlook, for example, torture, rape that's perpetuated by civilians. It means we overlook domestic violence that's happening as well. And I think sometimes it doesn't help us look at what are really the root causes of what's happening in Congo. And again, back to your question, we have, the impunity is a problem. Poverty, I mean, it's a failed state. Congo is a failed state. There's a scramble for its resources. There's little security, little infrastructure, lack of education, corruption. All of these are contributing to the massive, massive scales of sexualized and gender-based violence that are happening in Eastern Congo. So this is a very different reality than what Kabila is positioning.
Bineta Diop, as we know, there's lots of fires to put out on the continent. We can think of neighboring Central African Republic right now, where there are UN, French, and African forces present to try to stop a religious and ethnic genocide from taking place. Do you feel that Congo kind of falls off the radar since it's been going on for so long?
Yeah, I think that, let me first say that I have been in the Panzi Hospital, and I'm very glad and honored to have shared last year the prize of the Chirac Foundation with Denis Mukwege, who is a very good friend of mine. We have been fighting the same cause in DRC, but also in other places. So we need to salute his effort. But also we need to recognize the work done by the women of Congo. They are not just survivors, they are not just victims, but they are trying to reconstruct. I have been in DRC, East Congo, when the rebel movement M23 was there. Now it is another rebel movement who is really trying to destroy, to continue, the FDLR. We need to target those, disarm them. Your issue of impunity, but disarmament. Where are the arms coming from? We need to disarm those people, but also stopping the buying, furnishing the rebels, the arms, and so on and so forth. It's linked to the natural resources, but other. Coming back to the Central African Republic, I was there with the director of UN Women. We did a joint mission in my mandate as a special envoy of the African Union. And we found that the same thing is happening. Women have been kidnapped, people have been targeted, and we call it a religious fight, but it is not. I think it is the power issues that is there, and violence. The women are being targeted. You see them, how they're suffering in refugee camps, in displaced camps. Something needs to be done. We need to address the impunity issues, but also we need to recognize that women are themselves fighting themselves to reconstruct their nation. They are fighting to be survivors of war, and with their dignity, we need to help them, like Mukwege is doing, to restore their dignity. And that's where all of us are embarked to make sure that we address some of those issues on the ground.
One of the key issues, Natasha Henry, is the breakdown of the family, obviously, in situations like this.
Especially since some of those victims are very, very young. So it's not just mothers, it's also girls, very young girls. And maybe one day we'll have figures about the men who are victims of rape, because this is like the big secret, big taboo, of course, but men are also victims of that kind of violent sexual rape. They're breaking down a society. And I think that what has just been said is very important. In that kind of clinic, and this is why I think he gets this award today as well, it's not just about surgery. I mean, these women come to that place and they're very, very badly hurt. So it is about surgery and surviving in a physical way, you know, because of the fistulas and the gynecological destruction that they've been through. But it's also about reconstruction, self-esteem, I mean, a word that's not used very much anymore, but would be appropriate maybe, is empowerment. You know, they have to start their life again. So, yes, they are on this surgery, in the surgery ward, and they have all the, you know, all that to go through. But afterwards, it's all about reconstruction of their identity, personality. And this is working because these women are strong, because they're surrounded by strong people who believe in them, who say, it's not your fault. I mean, which is the first thing you should tell a rape victim, really, which is even what we're trying to do here in Paris. It's not your fault, even if you had this skirt or whatever, it's, you know. So what they're doing at that clinic is also all the after you've survived physically, the psychological surviving. And this I've seen with groups of women like that is very, very efficient. They're very strong, it's very efficient. And the first time I heard about all this was with Eve Ensler, who was involved in setting up the City of Joy just next to the Ponzi Hospital. Because she thought that, you know, I mean, she thought that, yes, if you bring them together and they share and they dance or whatever might seem a bit awkward, it helps. You're not alone. You are with my sister who's been through the same thing, and together we will build a new, better society.
Leanne Deroche, the resiliency, you've witnessed it firsthand.
Yes, absolutely. And it is such a remarkable part of the healing process. And this is what's, I think, partially, well, absolutely incredible about the model that Dr. Mukwege and his staff have implemented. So once a woman has finished treatment at the hospital, many of them don't have a place to go because of the stigma associated with rape. And most have been abandoned by their families, by their villages, by their husbands. And so Pansy Foundation was just able to open last month a new facility called Maison Dorcas. And it will be is home to over 200 survivors, as well as their children. A woman can stay a minimum of 6 months, and depending on her situation, longer if needed. And this is so women can get follow-up care so that they can develop skills, receive some perhaps legal aid, learn about their rights, maybe learn a skill to read and to write. So it's a way of, to use the word empowerment again, you know, bring self-empowerment, economic empowerment for women, so that when they do leave Maison Dorcas, they are healed, but in many, many ways, in mind, body, and spirit.
Well, Leanne, we have a question from a viewer, Shuja, asking, I wondered where using rape as a weapon of war came from. Where was the term first used?
That's a really good question. And I couldn't tell you who came up with the phrase or coined the term. But the one thing that's quite evident and that we know is that historically, rape as a weapon has been used since the beginning of time. I mean, the historical record bears that out. And I think we have to be careful. One of the other speakers alluded to this, that, this isn't just a problem to Congo or to the continent. I mean, look at the reports about sexual assault in the US military, for example. So this patriarchy, misogyny, the position of women in society in a one-down position relative to men is something that's, endemic around the world. And this hasn't really been mentioned yet, but we have to talk about that. We have to talk about that as well, the social construction of gender and the position of women in societies, and what is this about? And this is where men's voices become particularly important. This is not a women's issue. In fact, you could argue it's men's issue because they're primarily the perpetrators. And so we need men as allies and to actually champion this cause alongside of us if we're going to push back and make a difference and stop the sexualized violence.
Julia Wono, how does that message resonate, for instance, in your native Cameroon?
Well, it is true that...
Are men taking part in this conversation more than before?
There are steps towards gender equality.
Give it to us straight.
Well, for example, there are more and more women in Cameroonian parliament, which is a victory. It's a first step. And to jump on what was said earlier regarding the proactive African women, it is true. More and more women have influential places today. I'm thinking of the Minister of Finance of Nigeria, who is a woman who basically is an architect, one of the architects of her country being the first African economy.
Or the chair of the African Union.
And the chair of the African Union, or even Joyce Banda, president of Malawi. So there are more and more conscious African women of the realities of these inequalities. And there are more and more women who want not only to be seen as victims or passive, victims of inequalities, but active doers against these inequalities. And I think it's important to stress on that. Of course, the role of men is important because they are, of course, concerned. But today we're witnessing, I think, something very historical, which is a burgeoning phenomena with African women being at the forefront of their own destiny, of their own dignity, of their own, economic empowerment and development. And I think that's the only condition for the African continent, as we're talking about that one, to be a more stable and, equal one.
All right, getting back to the specifics of Congo, where we talked about how women are the target, but they're not the prize. The prize are things like tin, tantalum, tungsten, gold. They're all in your mobile phone, and they're all mined in eastern Congo. Back in 2011, a Congolese lawyer and activist, Denis Mukwege, started an online petition to get mobile phone makers to make conflict-free products. Activists say today many corporations are working to comply with tougher legislation. But still, Bineta Diop, when you see the situation in eastern Congo, do you look at your mobile phone in a different way?
Yeah, I think not just the mobile phone, but it's the use of all the natural resources in our continent. The population don't benefit from it because we are not saying that we don't exploit the resources. It has to be used by everybody. But at the end of the day, the people around those are targeted as well because of those natural resources. You can imagine that those private sector illicit, as we said, private sector that we see on the ground in DRC and other places, they want to evacuate the population. So they continue to dig, and we need to denounce them. And I think that is why we need to watch them. There are so many NGOs watching to say, watch our resources. We don't want to exploit them, and it doesn't benefit to the population. In the contrary, they are targeted. You talk about the international community in response, not only DRC. We need to see that this issue of war is dealt by the Security Council. And we need to ask the Security Council, the UN, who have put so many resolutions, 1325, which say that women should not be victims, but women should be sitting at the table. and participate in resolving the conflict, because there is no agreement that is sustainable if women are not at the table and contributing. It's not happening. So women does not benefit from the natural resources, doesn't contribute to the resolving of the conflict, but when it comes to bear the burden of crisis, it's the women themselves. So we need to change the whole architecture of peace, or even the architecture of war. We need to put those actors that are the women at the forefront of the solutions if we want durable peace. In Africa, for example, the African Union is putting a lot of emphasis. As I said, there are NGOs, there are women's groups, but also when we name women like Madame Dlamini Zuma, who is the chairperson of the African Union, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, you name them. My sister who just spoke talked about women that are empowered. They are Minister of Finance, President. So we cannot say we have not demonstrated the capability of women to take the leadership in managing our conflict, but also building our nation. So we need to transform, not being victims, but be leaders in our society. And that's the change we want by Security Council, by European Union, but other institutions like the African Union.
All right, so put pressure on the politicians above. Leanne de Roche, at the local level, when you're sitting in Altoona, Pennsylvania, what do you tell people to do to?
It's a great question, and I get asked this a lot, especially by students. I'm an academic, and people will say to me, you know, I'm just a poor college student in central Pennsylvania. What can I possibly do? And I remind them that there is absolutely much that any individual can do, from working at the micro level to the macro level. Macro being, just as the speaker was talking about, in terms of lobbying our own elected officials and trying to bear influence that way and coming together to do that. But also individually, it starts with us educating ourselves. So I encourage people to learn more about what's happening and then get together with their friends and use their own talents to be able to raise awareness further about what's happening. We need political will for there to be change in Congo. And I believe that many of the agreements and policies, UN resolutions, they're there. Some of this legislative work has already been done. Now it's a matter of enforcing the agreements that we have. So if we raise our voices and put this issue on the radars of those that have the power, then it's that sort of political will that we've seen historically is going to bring change.
All right, Leanne de Roche, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you for joining us from Pennsylvania. I want to thank as well Bineta Diop in Geneva, Julie Awono, and Natasha Henry. Thank you for joining us here. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And for our Media Watch segment, let's say hello to James Creedon. And our top story of the day is on your radar.
That's right, Francois. We're looking at reaction online and on social media to the lockdown situation in Ottawa. Quick look, first of all, at the Globe and Mail, which is obviously, as you would expect, doing breaking news coverage of the story. They have a video on the front page of their website showing the inside of the Parliament building in Ottawa, Francois, as shots were fired. Now, I'm not sure if we'll have the audio on that video. If we can get the audio, it might be helpful, but you can take it from me that this is a video showing the shootings, or at least you have the audio of shootings on the inside of the building. Elsewhere on social media, this is a bulletin that was circulated on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, reminding all staff to stay in their offices with doors locked. So you get a very...
And away from windows.
That's right. You're really getting a sense of a city, and certainly parts of the city, in lockdown. Even in New York City, Francois, the NYPD were dispatching extra security to the Canadian consulate. Sounds like it might be perhaps very much a precautionary measure, but I suppose, again, you're getting a sense of the climate. Canadian state media also, CBC Ottawa here, saying tune in every 15 minutes for updates to keep safe in Ottawa today. So look, you're really getting a climate, even from the media coverage, of quite a lot of fear in the city.
This is all happening in what's usually an incredibly safe city.
Right. So it is. I think it's. I suppose the locals are very much taken by surprise by all this. The city of Ottawa as well can be followed for updates at Ottawa City. Again, with the latest information coming through, and the Royal Police as well, asking François for photos or videos to be sent to that particular address, so that can be found on their Twitter page. Now, there's one sort of side story to all of this. Glenn Greenwald, best known, I suppose, for being involved in the Edward Snowden and Guardian leaks at the time. Canada at war for 13 years, shocked that a terrorist attacked its soldiers. Now, this was written yesterday before the attacks this morning on Parliament Hill. He has been absolutely lambasted for that article, people saying that he's a terror apologist, and he has been very quick to come back and say, an update for those who are willfully distorting my points about the attack on the soldiers. And you can go back to that article, and at the end he says, look, I'm not talking about justification. How can anyone justify what's happened? This is an article about causation, but it hasn't stopped people criticising him. Perhaps not the moment for such remarks. One thing I don't like about Twitter, says one Twitter user, is speculation. Let's just make Ottawa safe again. Always worth reminding, I think, users of social media at a time like this, that there's a huge amount of misinformation that circulates online. Andy Carvin, who is, I think, one of the I suppose a Twitter star, if you like, in terms of breaking news coverage. He says if you see breaking or confirmed on a tweet, it's probably neither. So a rule of thumb that he's reminding some of. And I'll just finish with this. Imad Mestua, a sometime contributor to France 24, saying, avoid searching Canada and Islam on Twitter after an attack. So clearly an awful lot of
people already looking for causes.
Exactly.
And certainly because after that incident of 48 hours ago, that took place in Canada. James Creedon, I want to thank you. And of course, as you were saying, this is a breaking news story. And we will continue to follow it. I want to thank again our panel for joining us. Thank you for being with us here. Much more to come at the top of the hour on France 24.
Encore. The biggest collection of Picasso's work is once again back on show in his adopted home of France. The museum in Paris, dedicated to the most famous artist of the 20th century, is reopening after 5 years of renovations. Join us along with the artist's grandson as we rediscover his works and visit the Parisian haunts he frequented with the woman he loved, his family, and his artist friends.
Encore, en France 24 and France24.com.